We're going to resume the work sessions part of the Commonwealth Transportation Board meeting. So I think we have one more presentation this morning, and then we will go into our actual public hearing, formal action session. So I think Ms. Maxwell is here this morning to give us a legislative update. I think Mr. Donahue will probably add some color behind that in terms of actual discussions we've been having with the General Assembly members and what their positions are. So, Ms. Maxwell, good morning to you today.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Just so you know, she was working yesterday because when I left, I saw her in the elevator at the General in there, so she was not goofing off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very briefly, I wanted to run over, you all should have a handout bearing all of the bills right now that we're reviewing. This may not be all of the bills that we see this year. Friday is the deadline for submitting legislation, so there's still a couple more days, and there are still probably some bills in the pipe that we are yet to see, have yet to see. We are at the point right now in the session where everything is very preliminary. In a lot of cases, you know, we're just laying eyes on the legislation. We're assessing the impacts. We're assessing the intent. In a lot of cases, we're having to talk to the patrons to fully figure out their intent or ascertain their intent. So what I would say about the descriptions that you see on this chart is they are very preliminary. They are very basic. They may not always be 100% correct or accurate or give you all the detail. The devil's in the detail on a lot of these. So that being said, though, we did want to give you, just sort of highlight, give you a sense of what's going on in the session. We'll probably, I'm assuming we'll be coming back at the next meeting and give you more updates and give you a better sense of what's happening. But this will at least alert you to the kinds of issues that the General Assembly is looking at this year. That being said, first bill we're looking at, we're going to start off with the governor's and the agency bills. First bill is a governor's bill. This is House Bill 1067. Basically, this is a bill that would authorize the issuance of bonds if we're not able to work out a P3 arrangement for the I-66 project. So it's a contingency. It's not a definite. So, but it's in essence a placeholder if we find that we're not going to be able to work out a P3 project.
Next one comment to that: the bill's a definite. The issuance of the debt is a contingency, and we're working out with bond counsel and the legislature. What the trigger would be. Probably going to be date. In other words, if we don't have a deal by a certain date, we're able to issue them. But I hope we don't have to issue these bonds.
It's an insurance policy.
It's an insurance policy. That's what it is. The intent is, and I don't care who controls the trigger. Because what I've said is we will come before the advisory committee again, and I'll go to the money committees and say, here's why, we had to do this because the concessionaires were not able to reach what they said they would do in meeting the term sheet. So that's really what it is. But as you all know, with the reforms in 1886, if you go back and look at the P3 deals we've done in the past, this is where the actual negotiations begin, and it's all about, not necessarily all about leverage or good faith, but quite frankly, if they don't believe the Commonwealth has the facility to do it themselves, the deal doesn't get as good to the Commonwealth. And that's not a criticism of our partners. It's simply the matter of how negotiations work. Everybody's doing what they think is in the best interest of their fiduciary parties. Don't blame them, but we don't want to enter these negotiations not having this as strong a hand as we can in going through. But I want to again point out, we don't want to issue these bonds. It is our intent to have a third-party concession on 66. Assuming there are other bills that Joanne will go through that allow us to do that. But at least that's where we are right now.
Mr. Chair. The next bill is House Bill 1069. That is the Secretary's bill. That's what we're calling the tolling omnibus bill. There are various provisions in this legislation that one of the more significant ones that you will see is there is a limitation on the ability for us to toll, but there are exceptions to that. And Nick may be able to explain more about those exceptions. But bottom line, There are exceptions, like if we add capacity, then that's one exception. There would not be a requirement that the General Assembly approve tolling on a new facility, for instance. There's another exception where if, the way I read it, if there are two portions of a facility or a corridor that are tolled, and then we're enhancing the section in between up to 10 miles, we don't have to go back to the General Assembly if we want to impose tolls on that new section.
So why don't we have Mr. Donahue come up and really go through, because as many of the people who, and I'm just understanding, these bills are written for certain situations, although we don't say they are. And so the genesis behind this bill was we felt like there needed to be some good tolling guidelines. For instance, we got requests to toll secondary roads. We did not think that should be something the executive branch or the CTB should do without General Assembly approval. And so, and also people are asking, well, when does this tolling stop? You know, where does it stop? And we said, you know, let's put some parameters around this where choice has to be included, some good policy. Also pointing out that we have, at the state of Virginia, with the feds, we still have one slot that we could toll an existing interstate. We don't believe, without adding capacity, we don't believe that is good policy. And we're willing to say, no, we shouldn't do that unless the General Assembly allows us to do. So that's the genesis behind this. On one side, giving parameters to the public aware how this can be done. On the other side, you know, making sure that there's good policies involved in this. So, Mr. Donahue, yeah, you can.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So this bill has several provisions. The first, as Ms. Maxwell mentioned, deals with limitations on tolling, and this would apply not only to the CTB and the VDOT Commissioner, but also apply to the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority and the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission, as well as any P3 deals entered into the Commonwealth, within the Commonwealth. Right now, there's multiple entities that would have authority to impose tolls on any existing lanes across the Commonwealth. And what this bill says in very kind of simple language is if there's an existing normal lane, so not an auxiliary lane, not an HOV lane, you cannot impose tolls on it without approval of the General Assembly. So some of you may recall back in 2013 and 2012, the previous administration talked about imposing tolls on I-95 north of Richmond between Fredericksburg and then also down by Emporia. You would, if this bill becomes law, you would not be able to do that without an affirmative vote of the General Assembly. It does let the CTB, the Commissioner, as well as those other entities that I mentioned, impose tolls on, say, a new bridge. So if you were to build a parallel 301 bridge next to the existing nice bridge that was 2 new lanes of traffic, that could be tolled. If you wanted to convert an HOV lane to an express lane, because that's not available to single occupant drivers today, that could also be tolled. And then there is 6 lines that was very, very complicated when you read it, but basically there are going to be some sections in the Commonwealth where we may have a bridge that has 2 normal lanes and 1 express lane, and then you're going to have 3 normal lanes for about 2 miles, and then you're going to have 2 normal lanes and 1 express lane. And it says in that short 2-mile segment, you can convert one of those lanes to an express lane so you have a unified system and network in an area. And an example of this in the Commonwealth is down on 64 and Southampton roads, where you have HOV lanes that Mr. Utterback updated the board on yesterday that we're considering converting to express lanes. As you're heading on 64 east there, those end at Battlefield Boulevard 2 miles before the high-rise bridge. As members of the board may remember, the discussions we've been having with you all about the improved high-rise bridge calls for some form of management on at least one of those lanes. And we want to avoid the situation where you have 2 general purpose lanes on the high-rise bridge and an express lane, and then you have this 2-mile gap where if you're in that express lane, everything gets screwed up because you go to, with 3 general purpose lanes for that short segment. So there's 4 really weird reading lines in this bill. That's what it's talking about.
As example, there's a small part in Northern Virginia.
Yeah, similarly, if on the 495 heading towards the Wilson Bridge, there was a desire in the future to convert the through versus local lanes, one of those into express lanes, filling in a gap and that regional express lanes network, this would allow that to take place. But again, it's not a backdoor to saying, let's go find I-81 and, add express lanes to that, because there wouldn't be any circumstance on I-81 where this would be applicable.
Mr. Chairman, one question is, would this apply to greenfield new roads?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Fralin, a new road that opens as a toll facility may be tolled.
The second question is, and this is, why would we want to give this up? I mean, we've already got 6 or 7 exceptions that were going into the General Assembly. Like, well, I got this thing, and then I got this other thing. The reason that we have this body is to be insulated from political considerations. There is no member of the General Assembly that's going to vote to toll anything in this district, because they're going to get beat up for it. So I don't know why we're bringing. I mean, I can see why there's tons of bills in here that say, don't toll this, don't toll that. We're going to do this.
So they have some place to go. So we don't get something. And also, why shouldn't we put parameters about the bad policies? We do not want another downtown midtown tunnel. I don't think we should leave that open to another. I think that's just bad policy.
But doesn't this effectively give them veto power over any P3 that requires a toll?
No.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Fralin, if you look at all the P3s with the exception of the downtown midtown tunnel, this would have absolutely no impact on this. So, for example, on 66, right now you have 2 to 3 general purpose lanes and 1 HOV lane outside the Beltway. Our proposed project would convert one of those HOV lanes and add another express lane, and that is perfectly legal under this exception. The same thing on the 495 express lanes, the same thing on the 95 express lanes, and similar in the Pocahontas Parkway, because that was new construction.
New water crossings, same thing.
You're not asking us to endorse. This is for information anyway.
That is correct.
But your comments are valid. I mean, they are. But there is a general, Mr. Brown, you may not be, because you don't live in an area where tolls are in place. And I don't mean that to be but there is a general feeling, that's the public. This is very, very politically charged. Where does this end? How can I give them some definition on when we can and can't do? And I think that's generating a lot of what's happening. I mean, we introduced tolls in Hampton Roads very, very poorly. Very poorly.
Mr. Chairman, I don't dispute that. I also would say that for regions that don't have the taxing authority, if they want to build any major road, we saw how 81 scored. If we want to widen 81, I don't know how you do it without tolls.
And you're able to do it with tolls.
Wow, we don't have any HOV lanes on it.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Fralin, a new lane on 81, as I've explained, could open to traffic as a tolled facility, and that would be legal under the provisions of this bill.
You'd have to make it a hot lane or something.
It could be a fixed toll in that lane, sir.
Fixed toll or hot lane.
Because it's new capacity.
New capacity. You just can't go toll what's right there. Anyway.
And Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Fralin's point, I would remind the board that there's already provisions that prohibit tolling of I-81's existing lanes or any new lanes without approval of the General Assembly, which passed in 2008 when I think some of the members were in the Assembly.
I understand that.
Before 2008.
I'm trying to remember how I voted on that. But I'm thinking a big bill.
William Walker.
It was Todd Gilbert's bill, I believe, actually, from...
Bill, I remember.
But no, so there's some other provisions of this too.
There are. So that's one of the kind of 2 halves of this bill. The second half of this bill really deals with, I think, trying to reduce the instances of toll violations and also bringing in line the civil penalties in Virginia more to national standards for first-time violators. So I think with the increasing use of electronic toll collection with the toll gantries, and people no longer have kind of the toll booth that they drive through where it shows red if your Easy Pass doesn't work, or you didn't throw the quarter in because you didn't throw it, and then you just drove through the booth and you hit the little bar. A lot of folks are concerned that I go through the gantry and how do I know if I violated? There's nothing to give me that kind of feedback loop. So what this bill requires is that the VDOT would need to create an electronic notification system to be in touch with Virginia Easy Pass holders. And so if your Easy Pass, either because you have no money or because some technological malfunction doesn't read, you would not get a toll violation for a period of at least 10 days. And during that time period, VDOT would contact you either by text or email, which would be a preference stated by the EasyPass account holder. And then we would give you 10 days to add money back to your account, and we would try and reprocess that toll at least 2 times. And we would provide you with an additional notification on around day 6 to make sure that we reduce the frequencies of toll violations. The department, to its credit, has been already implementing this with different toll operators across the Commonwealth. And I think the first toll operator they did it with was the South Jordan-Norfolk Bridge, and they saw the instances of violations reduce 80% when this policy was put in place.
That doesn't take any human action, though. It's just...
It's all electronic. And then the other thing that we do is today the toll violations in Virginia, even for first-time violators, start at $50 to $100, then escalate to $250 for hot lanes, then $500, and then $1,000 for any fourth or subsequent violation. We did a scan of what toll violation civil penalties are nationally, and to kind of put things in perspective, the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, which only has fixed tolls, and those tolls range from $12 to $18. The civil penalty for the first violation is $50. The civil penalty for the fourth violation is $50, and the civil penalty for the 1,000th violation is also $50. However, in Virginia, after the first 4, you're at $1,000 a pop, even if it's an honest kind of first-time mistake. And so this bill changes what the civil penalties are only for first-time offenders. So, and I want to really stress that. If you go to court once, you'll get these reduced rates. If you go to court again, there's no saying, oh, I didn't know how this worked. You know, we would leave the fee structure in place for any subsequent violations. But for first-time offenders, they would be reduced to $25 for the first and second offense, and then $50 for any additional offense beyond that. And they would also be capped at $2,200 as a total, including the administrative fees, which is something that was already put in place by the 2 concessionaires we have down in Hampton Roads with Elizabeth River Crossing, and also in Northern Virginia with Transurban. Now, some folks have said, well, are we reducing these too much? Is this going to effectively take away, you know, the incentive to pay the toll? And I would respectfully say, no, not at all, because for each toll violation you were brought to court for, in addition to the civil penalty, there's a $100 administrative fee. And so the $2,200 cap today that's in place voluntarily by these folks is essentially 4 violations. Under this new fee structure, when you go to court for 4 violations, you're going to pay $750. The average income in Virginia is $49,000. $750, I think, is 1.7% pre-tax of an average Virginian salary. If we don't think that's a disincentive, I just simply disagree with that logic. 2% of someone's annual income pre-tax is a big disincentive.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Donahue, in the RMTA, we've had some experience with this, and what we've found is that the courts are somewhat sympathetic to violators. I think we had a situation where a young lady actually ran close to $200,000 worth of violations, and wasn't in a position to pay it, and judge probably wouldn't incline to put her in jail. So
We don't have debtors' prison.
Right, exactly. So I guess I don't know what our experience has been with regard to collections. I know in different jurisdictions, judges have different sensitivities, but can you comment on that at all?
So I do think we're seeing different experiences in different parts of the Commonwealth. So I know in Northern Virginia there was some gentleman who I believe ran the Dulles Toll Road toll every single day for several years, and ended up and was provided with I believe it was $150,000 judgment, and so his wages will be deducted basically probably for the rest of his career there. And I think there's also a lot of perceived concerns from residents about these fees when they're not sure whether or not they violate and they don't know if it happens. And so I think there's a lot of concern that we're hearing about from the community of, you know, sometimes you screw up, and can't there be some type of forgiveness for that first time? And that's what this bill is really getting at, is reducing the frequency of violations and providing some level of first-time forgiveness for people who are like that man who ran the Dulles Toll Road every single day for, you know, I think it was a year and a half. I don't remember the exact amount of time. This isn't going to, you know, waive the penalties for that gentleman. He knew what he was doing, and for every single day for over a year, he decided not to pay a toll.
Yeah, and Mr. Brown, before I get to Mr. Casper, what the judicial branch does or doesn't do, I mean, I don't think we shouldn't be wondering from district. We're just trying to make good policy across the Commonwealth. That's, just like the General Assembly gives us the money, it is what it is, and the judicial branch will do, but this is just trying to put some good policy on a person who really in good faith messed up, not the habitual offender. Mr. Casper.
Nick, where do those fines go? Where does that money derive from?
The civil penalties, depending on the toll operator, either go to the toll facilities revolving account for VDOT operated facilities, or for the concessionaires, those civil penalties go to the concessionaire. So in Northern Virginia, if you do it on the Dulles Toll Road, I guess they would go to MWA, because they're currently operating that under a contract with VDOT. If you run through the Jordan Bridge, that would go back to I forget the name of the company there, but the folks who operate the Jordan Bridge.
Yes. Okay. This particular section was not aimed at the concessionaires in terms of getting their actual fees for collection. Okay, so in other words, we're not doing anything for that. But remember yesterday I pointed out there was a provision that Mr. Kilpatrick went through if there was a change in law and whether or not it was discriminatory or not. If you change the law, if we would just do this for one concessionaire, they would have a compensation event. So that's why it's statewide approved. In that this is not a material, in other words, change in the law that's going to, like we didn't outlaw tolling. So we were very careful to make sure we're not trying to get at what it actually costs for them to collect it. What we're trying to get at is the fee. I mean, the actual civil penalty and what these people were incurring. And again, it's only if you're a habitual guy, whatever, Mr. Brown, whatever they want to do, that's fine with us. But your first time you made a mistake, it's an awful fee to pay if you're truly made a mistake.
And Mr. Chairman, one other thing I would just add is by putting in place the cap and the reduced penalties for first-time offenders, I think some of these folks who offend never go to court and don't actually understand the implications of the actions and the fact that there can be up to $500 penalties for individual offenses. It's our hope that this will get the toll operators to take action as well against folks before things get to the $200,000 point, particularly because one is going to be capped at $2,200, and that will let these these violators know there are real consequences to this action, and hopefully deter this behavior. Get folks to stop doing this much sooner than I think we've seen in the past. Because some operators have waited years to bring people to court, and that's how you get these $100,000 toll violations. We should not be waiting that long to inform someone that they're in trouble, particularly when their actions on a daily basis are adding $1,000 to that penalty.
Mr. Dyke.
Just a brief question. Is there any connection between toll violations and the points that you accrue as far as your individual driver's license is concerned?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Dyke, the General Assembly was very careful when they created this to say that these are civil penalties. There are no points related to your driver's license, and similarly, we are not supposed to communicate this information to your insurance company because this is not a sign of reckless driving or, anything regarding your ability to operate a motor vehicle. It's dealing with your ability to follow toll policy.
Thank you.
So just to follow up along the same lines, have we considered, or have we gotten to the point where we should consider whether or not we tie some kind of collection mechanism to the vehicle registration process and so forth? Because with the proliferation of tolls, and from my perch, most new construction is going to involve, in many cases, some type of tolling. Or reconstruction in some instances. So you're going to see more of this happening in the more heavily populated parts of the state. I know that I think there are some means that if you violate, it does accrue and it can show up there. But have we gotten to the point where we're thinking about connecting that more directly? And everyone, when they register their vehicle, they are agreeing that that can be added to their registration fees or tied to a bank account or a credit card or what have you for toll collection as we go to the newer kind of high-speed electronic tolling mechanisms that can re-license plates as opposed to easy passes. And just one other thing, because there are a number of folks that don't want to get easy passes, or they think they won't frequently encounter tolls, and then they come into a metropolitan area where there are tolls, and they have to use the road, or their GPS takes them there, and they don't have an easy pass, and they don't know how to respond or to fix it. So,
Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Brown's questions, and I'll answer your first one. Second, we purposefully supported legislation by Senator Miller in the 2014 session to eliminate the easy pass fees, because that, I think, was contributing to the mindset of, well, I'm going to use a toll, once this year. Why am I going to get an easy pass? And so we created a disincentive for Virginia citizens to use a toll collection method that, one, saves us money compared to toll booths, and then two, results in situations where they find themselves on a toll road and they go, oh, there's not a toll booth. I didn't know that. And they go through it. So we have worked to really take away any disincentives to get an easy pass. I think there's still more things that Deputy Secretary Johnson is working on in the Hampton Roads region. We're having a lot of issues there with deployment of easy passes, and she's going to be working with ERC and the $500,000 they're providing through the amendments to their comprehensive agreement to really work to get more easy passes in the hands of particularly the low-income commuters in that region. But that is an issue, and we're working on that. To your your first question, actually, there are already provisions that allow for the hold on registrations if there's unpaid toll violations. I think one of the issues we've had in the past, again, is the operators have not been taking some of the folks to court on a timely basis. We don't have that really with our concessionaire. They're particularly in Northern Virginia. I don't believe in Hampton Roads they've gone to court yet, so we may end up having that issue down there. But we have had that issue with the department and with MWA. And so, again, we're hoping this cap will speed up the process of taking someone to court, which, again, will reduce the amount of overall fees they owe, but then also it does bring into play this hold on the registration that DMV will place if you have outstanding toll violations and have not entered into some type of payment plan or paid those off with the courts.
Yes, and that also includes out-of-state coordination where we have different things, and there is processes set up in that regard. Mr. Holcomb, Commissioner Holcomb, continues to work on that with reciprocity agreements with other states, particularly in the Northern Virginia area where you've got Virginia and D.C. and all up there.
And Mr. Chairman, that's a great segue into the second Secretary's bill, which is House Bill 1070, also carried by Delegate Jones, which will authorize the Commonwealth for the first time ever and provide them the ability to enter into reciprocity agreements with other states to enforce out-of-state toll violations. And this is a two-way street. So, for example, if we were to enter into this with Maryland, Maryland would help us track down Maryland residents who have, skipped out on tolls on the Dulles Toll Road or the 495 express lanes. Similarly, the Virginia DMV would be obligated to assist Maryland with Virginia drivers who don't pay the toll on the Bay Bridge heading to the beach on the weekends. And so it is a reciprocity agreement that takes in place. This merely authorizes it. And it provides DMV with the ability to enforce out-of-state law violations with regard to registration holds. These reciprocity agreements will need to be negotiated on a case-by-case basis with individual states. We believe the first state and most likely state we'd enter into one of these agreements with would be Maryland, again because of the proximity and the fact that both Virginia and Maryland have toll roads. We currently have about $21 million in outstanding toll violations from out-of-state drivers. So this isn't an insignificant issue, and with the implementation of the 95 express lanes, with 95 really being the East Coast, north-south major road, we expect it's going to only increase in the coming years. And so I think you would look to see us start with Maryland and then also talk to other northeastern states, particularly in the 95 corridor, to be able to enter into these agreements.
Okay, so why don't we let Ms. Maxwell take us quickly through the agency bills, and Ms. Donnie will be there in case we get a question, but I would go through these, just highlight the ones you think are significant.
Right.
There's quite a few of them in going through.
Yeah, what I'll probably try to do is focus on those that impact the CTB as well as some others that have significant impacts. HB 661 is a VDOT bill. That bill would have, and I say would have, that bill did not make it out of subcommittee. So we're going to have to go back to the drawing board for another year. Bottom line, what that bill would have done would have been to allow the CTB to actually set the permit fees that we charge to outdoor advertisers who have the billboards along the highways that we have to regulate because of federal law. We have to permit them, inspect them, cite them when they fall into disrepair, approve any repairs they want to make. So that program right now is operating in a bit of a deficit when you compare the cost of the program versus the permit fees that we charge. Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I was going to say, we need to go through this pretty quickly.
Okay,
Yeah, in
all
other
right.
words,
Okay.
I'm not suggesting that they don't,
All right.
but there's a lot of them. We're going to have you back.
Okay.
But I would just hit the ones you think are really something that the
Okay,
board.
we can do that.
Because a whole lot of these are going to, as Mr. Williams will know, are going to die in committee.
Hopefully not, not all of the agency bills.
I know, that's
It has
right.
died.
That's right. So
Bottom line, 661 is gone for now. Senate Bill 240 is another agency bill, just allows tort claims to be filed electronically. We're also going to see, we've got a bill coming, an agency bill coming that would allow us to continue to treat our snow procurements, emergency snow procurements as emergencies. The next set of bills on page 4, these are bills impacting authorities, commissions, compacts. There's several bills impacting NVTA, Hampton Roads. A lot of them have to do with the membership or substitute representation. One of the items I'd point out to you is I want to see if the CTB, well, CTB's got its own section, so let's go to page 9. There's several bills that impact you all in various ways or would impact you. The first, House Bill 384, would require that any meeting of the Transportation Board that involves a discussion or vote related to transportation project valued in excess of $5 million has to take place in the highway construction district where that project will occur.
we're going to offer a friendly amendment that we should, as long as the legislature does the same thing, that we're going to agree to this. And that. Now,
obviously-
this being,
We'll buy a lot more planes for everybody to travel.
that's right. So,
What is the fiscal impact of this?
Well, we're not sure, but we did estimate it would be $5,000 to $10,000 of meeting.
that's right.
You would. It would require the members, in essence, to become
I would
full-time.
remind the group that we are the first CTB to have an actual meeting for a specific project. We are the first CTB to allow streaming of every meeting and subcommittee. I think we have been more, transparent than any CTB that I was involved with or whatever. So I think remember, the agencies are charged with all the public hearings. We are a policy board. The agencies will be out in those particular districts. And so, anyway, this is just, I think this is not going very far, but nonetheless, this bill, we will strongly oppose the bill.
SB 258 would require that those members on this board that represent districts, that their votes be weighted based on the relative populations of those districts. The at-large members, however, the bill doesn't address their voting, so it would probably be difficult to implement. SB 471 would simply add a representative from Hardtack and from NVTA to the board. Moving right along, looking at the revenue taxes, there are various bills that deal with tax revenues, nothing particularly significant. I would note HB 1122 and Senate Bill 46 on page 11 just continues a transfer from the TTF monies to support the Commonwealth Space Flight Fund. That number really is supposed to be $15.8 million. That's going to be amended. HJR, on that same page, you see the typical constitutional amendment that we see virtually every year, creating a lockbox on transportation funds. On pages 12 and 13, there are some casino bills that basically would authorize casinos, and they, a vast majority of the tax revenues from those casinos would be used to mitigate tolls. On page, you take a look at, we've got several naming bills moving through, nothing significant in the way of any kind of namings. Let's go to, there are a couple of bills I do want to point out. There is a bill in the Senate, Senate Bill 365, that you all probably will hear about or may need to be aware of. That is a bill that would carve out or exempt the Coalfields Expressway, and I'll try to find that for you all shortly. That would exempt the Coalfields Expressway from HB2 prioritization.
So that would be off the top, so I would think we would oppose anything that comes off the top, just letting you know.
It's our understanding that Senator Carrico has a budget amendment that he is, and we're not sure at this point of the nature of the amendment, but he has mentioned that he does have a budget amendment, so that's...
Could you imagine, there's still Mr. Donahue, 180 million still left on that road for the completion of Corridor Q. So we would oppose any budget amendment or anything that goes through. This is what I was saying yesterday. House Bill 2, we're going to find out if these guys really are serious about using data, or is it the same old pork and politics we've done before? We'll see.
If you move to page 27, there are numerous bills dealing with limitations on tolling. Generally, what we're going to see, as we understand it, is both sides of the General Assembly, the House and the Senate, are going to try to create tolling subcommittees where they basically look at these bills, this whole group of tolling bills collectively, and try to, I know on the Senate in particular, they're going to try to come out with 1 or 2 tolling bills. Generally, what you see is the tolling bills either prohibit tolling without General Assembly approval, or the other aspect of the tolling bills that we're seeing are similar to the governor's bill or the secretary's bill, in that they try to lessen the impact on first-time violators. So that's the gist of what we're seeing. Trying to think of anything else that's significant. There is one bill that has created some interest. That is at the very on page 33. There's a bill that would tie the performance evaluations of VDOT employees, 50% of their evaluations in Planning District 8, to congestion mitigation. So that's an interesting approach as well. Any other bill you think I need to mention?
There's a few other bills.
There's one legislator I'm going to hand my Secretary of Transportation pen to and say, I think the next governor, you just got to let him determine whether you want, because it's well beyond but just letting you know.
A little bit of micromanagement.
Mr. Chair, one other bill I need to mention is Senate Bill 197. That is a bill that would take the current revenue source that's being used to fund the bonds and the projects on Route 58. That would change that revenue source to I-73. The way the bill originally was drafted, it caused great consternation with bond counsel. As a result, they've modified the legislation. The intent is, once 58 is totally, everything is said and done, all the bonds are paid off, then they would convert the language in the statute to, and they substitute I-73. Bottom line, we don't believe, based on the current situation with bonds, et cetera, that would happen until probably, John, 2040, 2050? It's going to be some time out. But there's now a substitute that will be introduced today in Senate Transportation that is much more friendly to the bondholders on 58.
And, Mr. Chairman, just a few other bills. The there's a delegate that put in the bill regarding the performance evaluation of employees, whether or not they're, financial, maintenance, or whatever. I would just say that this is the
So
board
the
that
accounts
picks
payable
projects,
clerk
not
gets
VDOT
a
employees.
bonus.
That delegate has also put in place legislation that would require that in the House Bill 2 process, congestion be given the weight of twice of every other factor combined in category type A, which would have significant ramifications for Northern Virginia, Fredericksburg, and Hampton Roads. Similarly, there is provisions that we have an additional public hearing on any project valued in excess of $10 million in Northern Virginia after the PE phase, but before the detailed phase begins. We would also be required to run any projects, including maintenance projects, through the Northern Virginia congestion rating process, which again is a very detailed process. It has a cost every time we run projects through that, but this bill would tell us to run bridge replacements, pavement rehabilitations, as well as new capacity projects, which would have already been run through the House Bill 2 process through the Northern Virginia congestion rating process.
So you can see, I think there's a lot of attacks on the House Bill 2 before they even saw a score in that regard. So we will oppose those. I do believe, I'm at House Appropriations later today, I don't believe this represents a majority of legislators. But nonetheless, these are bills we're keeping an eye on and we'll so against. Mr. Dyke.
Yeah, could you give us an assessment of the, I see there's a proposal here to study opening the WMATA compact and looking at a number of different items. And I understand there's supposed to be one bill related to allowing the Secretary of Transportation to appoint members as opposed to GSA. Could you comment on that?
Yes, so Mr. Dyke is referring to a piece of legislation that I believe will be filed today or tomorrow by Delegate Levine, a new delegate from Arlington County, that would update the WMATA compact to take into account changes from the federal surface transportation bill as well as the Appropriation Act that says the federal representatives on the WMATA board are accountable to the Secretary of Transportation for the United States. Currently, they are accountable to the General Services Administration Director. I'm not sure why that was ever put in law or ended up being the case, but that started in 2008, and this is kind of an accountability measure to make sure that the person making the appointments to the WMATA board, in fact, knows about transportation. It's pretty common sense, and we would hope that that will be a layup bill moving through the session, but again, time will tell. There is, as Mr. Dyke referenced, a resolution that would require the Secretary and actually the Governor, to study the WMATA compact to determine whether or not there are changes that would be appropriate after 40 years of experience to improve the governance of the WMATA system. We're still taking a look at that resolution and figuring out where we'll end up being on that, but I think as this board knows, and particularly Mr. Dyke and Mr. Kaskowitz from Northern Virginia, we have had significant issues over the past few years regarding the WMATA governance structure. And unlike the Port of Virginia that is solely responsible to the Commonwealth, WMATA is a four-party entity, and every party has the same number of votes. And that can make things difficult, particularly when executive branch officials are used to having discrete and complete control over the agencies under their jurisdiction. To do anything with WMATA, we have to get at least all the members of one other jurisdiction to agree and half the members from another one, because we all have 2 voting reps, and so you'd have to have a majority to do anything.
It's actually more than 4 members, because in Virginia we actually have localities that are members.
True.
I mean, so it's and it makes some sense for us. Mitch will probably have a comment on this. We were setting up a new Metro Safety Commission, another compact that we got to make sure coordinate with this compact. So anyway, Ms. Mitchell, you may make
Yeah,
comments.
there may be a need. We're reviewing, as we're looking at setting up this Metro Safety Commission, which will also be an interstate compact, there may need to be some codified relationship with the existing WMATA compact. I can say, though, in having some informal discussions with folks within D.C. and Maryland, there's not a great appetite on their part to revisit the compact at this point in time. One of the most significant things that we, as the department, are going to be working on over the next year is negotiating a new capital funding agreement with the partners. And so that will have its own host of issues. So the way the bill's written right now requires us to sort of work with Maryland and D.C. So I guess if they're, I think it's really to study the possibility of a study. So if there's not a willingness on their part to look at it, we'll have to see really, if this bill passes, how much we could actually comply with that, so.
Mr. Connors.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I understand the history of it and the dedicated funding stream, but can we have an update on the Commercial Spaceflight Authority at some point?
Yes, I will. I'll have the Director Dale Nash come. We have Governor announced we have renegotiated our terms with Orbital, our flight partner, and pad has been rebuilt. Orbital did receive an extension of their contract. Flights will continue now through 2024. There is a bill in front and that we will be supportive of continuing the $15.8 million in revenues from transportation to the facility through the end of the contract but I'll have them come. We expect to resume flights this year. And it really is a part of the new economy. The model will never be simply we're going to make a lot of money off of sending rockets to space. But it will be a part of an economy where they sprout off jobs around over time. It's not going to happen all at once, but over time as we transition some away. So it's in much better stead than where we were a year ago. So I'll have him come. You all know the way the CTB works, you have no control over those agencies. And I don't mean that to be disparagingly. It is, those have their own boards. The port has its own board. That's why the port members should have never been a part of this board. Other than these boards need to report because some of the monies by law go to these agencies, right? The legislature will be done. So I'll have them come in and do that, just so you know how your monies are being spent in that regard.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Ms. Maxwell, anything else from your perspective?
No, Mr. Chair, we'll keep you updated. If anybody has questions about bills or status of legislation, feel free to email me.
Ms. Valentine.
This is just more of a comment because, early on in the presentation, Mr. Fairland brought up the fact, why are we ceding the authority that we have in the Secretary's bill on tolling? But when you look at all the tolling bills, it is, it's important that we put forward policy that allows us to increase capacity and be able to pay for it and put those kind of parameters not only for the General Assembly, but for people to understand. So, initially I was thinking the same thing. We're actually giving up authority, but I think having smart boundaries.
Let's be clear. We're not giving up authority. They have the ability to take it back. My point is, authority was first delegated here.
Well, Mr. Chairman, they do currently have the ability to take back a tolling arrangement if in fact it's not, but they would have to replace that money with something else. A. B, we'd have a governor that could veto that bill if they didn't like it. So the legislative process is a lot more difficult than this process, and that's by design.
I understand, but you saw all the bills, and we firmly believe there needs to be some parameters around tolling.
Right, and that was really my point. But, if for whatever reason we would need or want to impose a toll, it would have to, that didn't fit the guidelines, we would have to go to the General Assembly to get approval, which I think would be very, very difficult. So that was the part I was just saying.
Everything you and Mr. Fund said are absolutely correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
real
Mr.
quickly,
Rosas.
not to belabor that, couldn't we, as a board, implement rules guiding tolling without it being a General Assembly?
We can, but they're not codified. We could, yes.
And we could even in addition, right?
As long as they were within the guidelines of what was delegated to us, yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, to that point, we could adopt a policy that requires 2/3, 3/4 of this body to, if we were to adopt as a procedure or policy, what we call our stuff, if we were to adopt that and then say, hey, it requires 2/3 majority for that to be overruled or done something in violation of that, then we could essentially avoid having the General Assembly codify something and keep that flexibility at this body.
Yeah, you got a comment, Mr. Donahue?
So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Brown, and Ms. Valentine, to your points, yesterday the chairman and I were at a meeting with several members of the legislature talking about a contract that this board has voted on, as well as the Northern Transportation Commission voted on for I-66 inside the Beltway regarding the widening triggers. And this is not going to be exactly a verbatim quote, but what's black and white right there doesn't matter to me because it's not a law, was the general gist of the sentiment from some of the legislators there.
Quote, I don't believe your contract. I don't believe your God's rules and their guidelines. I don't believe them. Y'all say this, the next guy changes it. So I'm not saying they're right, but that's the issue.
Well, Mr. Chairman, since I brought this up, I think I need to say, if the executive branch wants to do this, if the governor wants to do this, it's not up to us to determine. It's the governor's decision, and we need to carry out the policy. We're not an advocacy board, so that's it's fine with me. I was just trying to maybe understand the rationale.
No, I think you're exactly right. Now, while on that point, Governor McAuliffe has chosen, in my opinion, governance every time over politics. He has never once come in to my office and say, I want you to kill a project or build a project. He is, I will tell you, when we did the independence of the CTB, his policy staff said, you're making a big mistake. You're giving up executive control. And he said, I think it's the right governance. So that, Mr. Freeland, that's exactly where it is, the right governance. We want to work hand in hand and say, look, these are massive amounts of money, large projects, and that is why we're working with, in this case, Chairman Jones, as to what are the parameters. That's why we worked with 1886, having representatives from the legislature on the P3. But you're exactly, that is, the governor has chosen that he believes that this is the right governance route to take. So that's, Mr. Freeland, you put it very eloquently. That's exactly where it is. Mr. Dyke.
Just a question. I know we meet again in February, but there's a lot of activity that's going to be going on legislatively, obviously, in the interim. Is it possible for us to get updates, maybe by email, as to where some of these things are going, or these certain bills have fallen off the table, or whatever? So at least we are aware of these things as a board, so we all have information available to us. So
I'm trying to think of the staff. The answer is we're going to be really busy too. But I guess, I mean, is there some summary we do?
On some interval.
Some interval, yeah.
Not every bill, but some of the major ones.
Yeah, okay, well, this document, we can, that Ms. Maxwell was not confident, so we can update that.
A reported crossover would be great. I mean, what bills even got out of the House with the Senate?
Mr. Chairman.
That is true. We will know a lot of
goes off the radar
crossover.
screen.
Next time we meet, crossover will occur, I believe.
When is crossover?
16.
Yeah.
And so if something really, let's put it this way. The answer is yes, Mr. Dyke, we will, particularly if something very impactful.
Something major.
And major comes down.
One of these tolling bills that would kill.
Yeah, the tolling bill, that's right. That has significant impacts on where we're headed. With Mr. Kilpatrick and State, we're in the middle of a negotiation. Okay, Ms. Maxwell, thank you very much. Guys, I don't know if you've been watching the weather, but it looks like we're going to get some. And we have with us today Mr. Scaravani. John is our prime contact on this emergency response, works for Mr. Kilpatrick. He's one of the many people behind the scenes that play a vital role, and since he was here, I thought I would let John give an update on what we might expect over the next few days with the weather. He's got a 10 o'clock call he's got to get to administer. John, appreciate you taking a little bit of time today and sort of giving the board an update on what we might expect.
Well, thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I think A weather briefing is being handed out to everyone. We're being forecasted for a significant storm Friday and Saturday. As you'll read, there are some areas of the Commonwealth that will be hit with possibly 2 feet or more of snow. This is something that we're taking very seriously. Our districts and our divisions are all prepping already. Excuse me. As Mr. Chairman said, we are getting ready to do our coordination conference call here at 10 o'clock. This is something that we do for every weather event, not just winter. The last round we went through, knock wood, was for the potential hurricane that was going to hit. This is the first one we're going to be doing for this winter. We do have a standard template that we follow, and we have a standard time. We set our time at 10 a.m. whenever we do this, which gives an opportunity for our districts to plan around what we're doing. We don't want to give them any surprises. We will get a detailed weather briefing from our partners we get a briefing from the National Weather Service through VDOT, but we also have our own conference, our own weather service that we contract with. It is a two-way communication. They will give a briefing, and our folks will be able to ask questions. It's an opportunity for our leadership. Secretary Lane, Commissioner, our Chief Engineer, our Chief Deputy will all be participating in the call. They give guidance. They give their expectations to our districts and our divisions. We will get a briefing from all of our districts and divisions, and also our partner agencies. We probably have over 250 people participating, listening on the call. There will be probably a dozen folks that do get to speak. And at the end, anybody who has a question or needs anything clarified does have the opportunity to do that. I apologize for speaking fast. As you could hear, I have this funny accent that the Commissioner usually likes because I am from New York. But I have my team prepping our room upstairs to get ready for the call. But I could take any questions if you have any.
You want to make a comment, Mr. Kilpatrick, real quick?
Yeah, I think that John works with Dean Gustafson, who you met, saw yesterday, State Operations Engineer. John comes to us by way of New York City, in case you hadn't noticed. A lot of experience with New York City in emergency management, police department up there. But this, what he's talking about in terms of us in preparation for these storms is something that we do as a matter of it's a part of our business culture, that in advance of a storm, usually we won't go 2 days out, but because of the nature of this storm and being the first major storm of the year, again, this coordination call is so important. It sets the tone, and it frankly shows that throughout the agency that right now today we're working on projects and we're building things and we're purchasing things, but we will rotate very quickly into 100% focus on emergency operations, and that goes throughout this building, every district, every residency, every area headquarters around the state. So it's something that has been well practiced by us. We're well prepared for this storm. The salt barns are full. The equipment has been checked and rechecked, and I expect that around Virginia today, right now, we're beginning the process of calling in contractors and even maybe doing some rigging of plows and spreaders. The storm itself, and we'll put out some press information, we expect that at least the models are showing this is going to be a significant storm. Mr. Moore commented that we were in the hall that we don't recall a storm where they're predicting such a high total so early. They've been calling this total out since basically since Monday. So we always hope that the storm speeds up and gets out of here, but this is going to be a good-sized storm for us. So we're ready for it. John, his team will be doing this coordination, and that will go on throughout the storm. We also have very solid weather information. In addition to the National Weather Service, we have our own, I'll call it private weather service. It kind of gives you not the for TV version, but the down and dirty details. And that's very helpful for us because they get pretty good about predicting when the snow is going to start and when it's going to end. So again, John, thanks for the work for you and the team. And we may not make the call at 10 o'clock, but I'm not worried about it because you guys got it covered.
All right. Thank you, sir.
I would ask the staff, first of all, we coordinate with the state police. We're on the call with the Virginia Department of Emergency VDOT, Emergency Management. I'm sure that command center is going to be open based on this. If you look at these totals Mr. Kilpatrick stated, 81 that quarter, West Salt looks like it's going to get 2 feet of snow or more. Everybody's going to be impacted. Looks like a fully engaged storm for us. What are we about, how many million per hour? I think
in a full mobilization, we can expend over $1 million an hour just in Northern Virginia.
Yeah. I think statewide, I think that number is somewhere.
We could spend a couple of million an hour with full mobilization, well over 10,000 pieces of equipment and personnel, both contract and state employees.
So for the board's perspective, we have $300 million, and $200 million. So we're getting ready to spend a bunch this weekend.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to hold you up. You're going to save people.
You got a few minutes.
But some of us talked about, I think 2 years ago, a way to budget better for these, where we accumulate money in account rather than budget at a flat amount, where then we got to go into other maintenance projects. Did that ever go anywhere?
Well, here's what happens is that doesn't go anywhere. What happens, we extend the maintenance we incur. I mean, you remember we had this discussion why wouldn't we spend it? I think we went back and looked at it, and working with them, they just extend on. If they get lucky, we don't have to spend it. He adds to it.
Okay. Thank you.
On that. All right, John. Thanks for you. I'm
Thank
sure
you,
we'll be
sir.
talking a lot this weekend, and appreciate all the hard work, both you and I'll throw it out to our safety employees. Virginia State Police, all that big coordination. I think the gentleman that used to say safety ought to be the #1 concern on every conference call is retired.
John did retire.
So we need somebody else to say that.
I got
so
that.
Make sure you say that every time we get
Yes,
on
sir.
there. So 'cause that is so.
Okay.
Appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, folks.
Okay, I think that completes the workshop session. Unless there's anything else, then we will come to a close. And now we will open up the formal action session for the Commonwealth Transportation Board here in January. And we'll start with public comment. Is there any public comment? Anyone who'd like to speak before the board? Yes. Good morning, Smith.
Good morning, Nancy Smith with the Northern Virginia Transportation Alliance. Just want to speak quickly today to House Bill 2 and the presentation you received yesterday. Obviously, from yesterday's presentation, this is a very complex process. Even the presentation was complex. Staff has had months to grapple with this, and you and the public have had less than 24 hours. So sorting this out is going to take some time. Pleased to see that you have many months ahead of you to grapple with this. The categories and processes would note that are far more numerous and complex than originally intended by Speaker Howe and Delegate Stolley when they first introduced the original bill, which called for a focus strictly on economic development and congestion reduction. While the added complexity and data sources selected, whether they may smarten or dumb down the project selection process, I think remains to be seen. And again, need to be subjects of careful scrutiny and discussion as you go forward. The need for and benefits of some of the top scoring projects, such as 66 outside the Beltway and I-64 and Hampton Roads, as well as the Collector Distributor Bridge in the Fredericksburg region, seem obvious, but the value and worth of others may not be so clear. And again, I think require careful examination and discussion of the factors and weighting upon which the ratings are based. The challenge of collecting and evaluating and weighing and otherwise arriving at all these rates was indeed great, and the Alliance sympathizes with the challenges that have been faced by staff over the last year and a half, while observing that to a great extent the complexity of this process is of the staff's making. The lack of CTB and statewide input into the project testing process continues to be a concern of the Alliance, inasmuch as such a restriction is not part of the authorizing legislation. And it's important to note that scoring and rankings are based only on projects that were submitted and do not necessarily represent the most important or beneficial investments for the Commonwealth. Again, I think a more statewide input would help correct this deficiency. Additionally, I think the disbursement of approximately 25% of the statewide high priority project funds across to the construction district grants clearly points to a lack of overall funds available, despite the efforts of House Bill 2313 to meet the needed demands on our infrastructure. And so in short, while certainly not taking a negative view of House Bill 2 process and its preliminary results, the Alliance believes that much work remains to be done in terms of explaining, justifying, and perhaps modifying the outcome. So let the discussions and examination begin, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other people would like to address the board this morning? Okay, hearing none, we will move into our formal action item. We have first the approval of the minutes from December 9, 2015. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, was there a second?
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. First up, our maintenance division, Mr. Gregg. Good morning, sir.
Chairman, members of the board, I have 4 items for you this morning. The first one is a commemorative naming in Dickinson County in the Bristol District. Board of Supervisors had a resolution to recognize the veterans, and they want to do so on State Route 83, Dickerson Highway, over the Crane's Nest River in Dickerson County. The bridge would be named the Veterans Memorial Bridge.
Chairman, since I'm closest to Bristol, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Fralin. Is there a second? Second. All those, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Gregg.
Mr. Chairman, the remaining 3 items are all in the Nova District, and these are just simply cleaning up old construction projects where we'll be discontinuing a portion of these routes. Would you like to take them individually, or do you just want to do them as a group?
We adopt the actions in a block.
In a block. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, is there a motion then for the approval of the 3 blocks? Mr. Dyke?
Yeah, I'd like to move the adoption of the 3.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Casper? Any discussion or comment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Greg, thank you very much. Ms. Pryor?
Good morning, Mr. Secretary, members of the board. I have 2 items for you today. The first item is an amendment of 3 projects to the 6-year program. One project in Bristol District, which is a reconstruction project. Another project is a roundabout in the town of Vienna, funded with a grant. And the third project is a safety project in Stanton District. I recommend your approval.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, additions are approved.
The second item is just our normal monthly transfers of surplus funds from completed projects to scheduled or underway projects. I recommend your approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, got it. Any discussion or comment? Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you very much, Ms. Pryor. Mr. Thrasher, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Item number 7 is a limited access modification in our Hampton Roads construction district, specifically on I-64 capacity segment 1. The project is located in Newport News. It's been approved by the City of Newport News via letter 23 November 2015, as well as the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization by letter 16 January 2014. FHWA has also provided its approval via letter on 3 December 2015. VDOT recommends that your approval for the limited access modifications.
I make a motion.
All right, let me get a second then. Is there a second? Second. All right, discussion, Mr. Kilpatrick.
Yeah, real quick, this is a good story about how we've been able to actually reduce the footprint of this project using what we call nutrient credits, which is the ability to buy into a nutrient credit bank in lieu of building stormwater detention facilities. So this is a good story. It's a much more efficient way of dealing with what nutrients basically are pollutants in the Chesapeake Bay. And this is a much more, for both us and for the environment as a whole, it's a better way of doing this and building a lot of small, difficult to maintain facilities. This is a good story here. What you see is we're changing the limited access control, but what's really happening, it kind of behind the scenes, is we've reduced our footprint on this project and provided, bought into nutrient credits to protect Chesapeake Bay.
Just from my first meeting here, limited access control change, is that to be interpreted just as you're either widening, adding, changing something with regard to interstate? That's basically the...
Yeah, this is fairly routine in terms of projects that have limited access, which are all of your interstates, and then a number of bypasses and some primary highways. So in terms on a project level, if we move the limited access 1 foot for like a intersection realignment or something like that, or an interchange, it has to go back because the board, you are the body that controls the access on those highways. So any change, any addition needs to come back through this board. You will occasionally see an access break, and that is that's either a new interchange or a new connection point. These are typically adjustments, and Mr. Thrasher will bring them, I won't say every month, but a number of times a year you'll see them.
Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Ms. Brown.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Item number 8 is a resolution for approval of the revenue sharing deallocation. You have a list of the projects recommended for deallocation. All of the localities that are impacted are notified. None of them are objecting. In fact, several of these were voluntary deallocations. So I would ask that you approve the resolution before you.
Is there a motion?
I move the motion.
Second? Okay. Any discussion or comments from Ms. Brown? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Moore.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Item number 9 is action to designate the newly constructed and open seminary ramp on I-395 as a HOV plus only at all times. That was the way it was scoped, and the promises made to the localities there in public hearing, and this is just formal action of the board to make it formal.
I'd like to move the adoption of the motion.
Second. Is there a second? Second. Second. I have one question. This is contemplated in as we are looking at the expansion of 395 also with the concessionaire?
It would stay that way and go through even with 395. These were commitments that were made in the public hearings, and I think if we heard something different back from the localities, we might come back to the board depending on how the operation works and how they view it as working within the city of Alexandria and northern Fairfax County.
But we'd have to come back to the board.
We'd come back to the board to modify it, but this is consistent with everything we've gone out with public hearing. Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. Just want to make sure. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Moore, thank you. Mr. Solis.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We're going to go over bids. Since the board last met, the department has received bids on 41 projects valued at $241 million. Of those, 7 valued at $194 million need to come before the board for approval. I'd like to go in order of the ballot. Please,
that'd be great. Yes, sir.
First item on the ballot is what we call order number 406. This is for a latex modified slurry seal contract in the Richmond district. We only had 1 bidder, but that's not unusual for this type of work. We have at most 2 bidders depending on the locale. We have analyzed the bid. We think it represents good value, and we're recommending it for award.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay. It's in your district. We typically, I'm sorry, what typically happens is, if it's in your particular district, we ask you to make the motion, unless you have some
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm not really familiar with this process, but I move adoption of the action.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, Mr. Malvin abstains. Any more comments or discussion? Mr. Casper?
Mr. Secretary, I continue to be uncomfortable. I realize it's a specialized business, but it's a $10 million contract with 1 bidder. I mean, and this is work that I'm sure we'll continue to do for years and years to come? How do we increase the number of bidders for a $10 million contract?
In terms of, Mr. Siley's mentioned this, slurry sealing, that technique, that process is pretty limited nationally. And in Virginia, we have fundamentally 2 companies that do that work. Occasionally, we'll get a third out of another state on a larger contract that may come in and bid this work. I don't know that I have a simple answer other than what we can do is say, okay, is the price that we're getting reasonable? You're not getting obviously not getting a competitive price. So then it goes, is this a reasonable price? If we were to find that the cost of this type of application was way out of line, what we may do is just say, well, we're just not, the alternative to doing slurry sealing, which again is a maintenance coating that goes over, helps skid resistance, extends the life. Plan B on that would be to do a mill and overlay project with asphalt. I mean, that would be your other option. Or to even more extensive, you would go to either asphalt or concrete rehabilitation. So those are kind of your choices.
Let me ask you a question on that. Would that be more or less expensive than what we're doing?
It'd be significantly more expensive.
That's the key point, I think.
It'd be significantly, because your plan B would be basically mill and overlay, and it would be significantly higher in terms of cost than this. So
do you expect we'll continue to see bids in this range come in with single bidders? I guess is my question.
I would say probably so.
Of this type of work.
Of this type of work.
It's a specific type of work.
Do I have to resign from the board if I go into this business? I just think what's the total volume of slurry sealing that we do in the Commonwealth per year?
Yeah, I don't know that I have that number. We'll get that. We can get that number from you. There's basically 2 styles. Basically, latex, which is the deluxe version, and then regular slurry, which we'll use in neighborhoods and in lower volume roads. We can get you that number, tell you what approximately we spend a year.
I would like to see that.
Yeah. Mr. Kasperwitz, I think in our area, I think there may be one more slurry sealer. We've got one in our area. I got to see the process. It extends the life of the road, I think, 7 years.
Yeah, typically.
For significantly less, but if we had that down in Southwest Virginia, we would be lucky to get one bidder.
Mr. Mulvin, I'm assuming you've done the analysis because the life of this slurry is not the life of a mill and overlay.
It is not. It's part of our. So we have, our overall pavement management program. You look from the simple patching to extend the life, or crack sealing is sort of that's kind of at the I'll call it the smallest impact. And then the next would be, again, this is sort of like a driveway sealer, but for roadways. And what it does is it seals off the minor cracking and seals the surface. The next level you go to is some kind of overlay or mill and overlay, and then you get beyond that, you're talking about either deep reclamation or full reconstruction. So that's kind of the evolution. And what you try to do is extend the life of what you've got as best you can and just replace the wear surface. But over a period of time, or if it deteriorates, or it deteriorates from the bottom up, you got to go with the big stuff.
So here's what I'd like you to do, Mr. Kilpatrick. The next 3 jobs we have, and I'm not maybe that we have that we think slurry, I would like you to get a competitive bid under what the next extended life is. The competitor, and then explain to the board what Mr. Maul was getting to, the life cycle cost of what that is. I think because assuming that the life cycle cost is commensurate, it's much better to do the slurry. Yes. But to the extent you're extending it out further, then you'd have to do the slurry 3 times. Obviously, it would have been better off doing that. So I think that would be one way to sort of pull this down. And I don't want to put extra burden on the department, but at least to give the board some understanding that we are getting good value for this process because of the lack of competition.
And our pavement management staff can put that together.
Let me add this, though, for the comfort of the board. There's 2 things. One, the motivation for slurry pavers to keep this affordable is high, because if he drives his price up into where we can mill and lay, we're going to mill and overlay. I mean, it's always a better choice. And the other thing is, if they were killing it, all these paving companies could easily be in this business, easily be in it. It's not a business they want to be in, because it's quite frankly not a They're not killing it, trust me.
So that's right, so Mr. Williams is explaining from
There's plenty of-
from the provider side.
Could do it
We'll
tomorrow.
look at it from the user side, but I think you're right, I mean, quite frankly, in our society, if this was a bunch of money, you'd have a bunch of people doing it.
There'd be plenty of people already
But, let's
equipped to
get some
do it.
facts.
They wouldn't have to ramp up, they could just start doing it right away.
It's a good approach, thank
Well,
you.
Mr. Brown.
I did have a question, because we've seen this similar situation with the RMTA, and I think we've done some slurry, we've done some mill and overlay, I think more recently mill and overlay, and frequently few bidders. And one of the things that we really pressed, at least during my chairmanship, was how do you go out there and try to find more bidders? And I think one of the questions or the responses that we got was that mobilization. If there's out-of-state folks that are doing this, getting them to mobilize and come here adds significantly to the cost, to the point where they can't be competitive if it's someone that's built infrastructure in the district. Now, I don't know this to be exactly the case here, but is that some of what is impacting why you're not getting other bidders?
It is. The challenge, again, this is a schedule, Mr. Siley's correct, so it's not a single route. If you were to do, I don't know, 30 miles of interstate continuous where there was a single mobilization, that tends to make things, then a company from somewhere else can say, yeah, I can marshal my resources and set up. But if I've got to bounce all over the place and hitting these locations, and what we try to do is, as best we can within a district or a region, get similar routes on the same schedule, so you're not traveling too much. But just the nature of this work, it's not like one continuous pull, and so that again, mobilization is a difficulty for any contractor.
But see, these are all things he can't control. What he can control is if he's using the right process based on the estimated life. I mean, he can't make people get in the business, he can't make them come from out of state. But our job would be to say, are you using the right process compared to whether we go out of that? And I mean, a lot of this stuff is good to talk about, but he can't control it.
Right, well,
Right here, we had an
Mr.
estimated
Chairman,
construction cost.
Yeah.
Because I want to address this.
No.
Mr. Castlewood's concern about why maybe there
Thank you.
aren't multiple bidders in this space, because I think we've encountered the same thing, and
No,
and it is troubling, but I understand that there may be.
This
some
is also not a business that I see the state going out and purchasing the equipment to do. It's pretty expensive equipment, and the technique, it takes a decent amount of training to get it down so it looks and acts right. It's just not a business that I could see. You could say, well, why don't the state do it themselves, and then you could control it. We would have great difficulty in doing it, and we would ultimately have to create our own contracting crew that would travel the state. Just not efficient. It's
You've
not.
already beat your construction estimate right here.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably.
Very similar to surface treatment. And the surface treatment, we used to be in that business, and we found out that we could contract it much more cheaply than doing it ourselves.
Okay, good discussion. I think you'll get him to come up and give us, and then we'll have some idea. At least we're being efficient with the state's monies, which no doubt we are already. But let's put it out here for the board to see.
Can you vote?
Yeah, we do. We have any other discussion? We've had Mr. Brown made a first, I think, and someone seconded over here. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Next project is order number F91. This is for a new interchange on Route 58 near Cortland. We had 8 bidders, which is a tremendous amount of competition for a project like this. We got an exceptional value, and we're recommending it for award.
Cortland, that'd be Hampton Roads.
Hampton Roads. Yes.
I had to abstain.
Mr. Baldwin. Okay, Mr. Williams, move. Mr.
I'm a surrogate for Hampton Roads.
Abstain. There's a second. Any discussion here? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. I can't say that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Next is order I-57. This is for a bridge replacement on Route 58 in Carsville. And even though this is showing here, we had 7 bidders, even though this is showing being a little bit above the planning estimate, it is not above our estimate. It's not above the, Mr. Kilpatrick talked about at the last meeting how we do an evaluative estimate that basically mimics the bidding process. In essence, we do VDOT's bid, and it is within the range.
Are you abstaining on this one? Okay. Mr. Williams?
I'd move the adopt.
Second.
Any comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Next project is I-81. This is patch and overlay of the southern section of 288. Basically runs from I-95 to Courthouse Road. We have 3 bidders on this, which is pretty good competition for this type of work. We think it represents good value, and we're recommending award.
Mr. Brown?
So moved.
Second.
Another abstention. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you.
Next is Order 405. This is another slurry seal contract. This is the not deluxe version of slurry seal that we use in subdivisions. We actually had 2 bidders here, so Boxley Asphalt participated as well as slurry in this case, and we think it represents good value and recommending award.
Mr. Brown?
So moved.
Second. Chairman, I have to abstain.
All those in, any discussion?
Just a question.
Yeah.
So, are all these bids low bid, or are they qualified bids? What is our
So
low bid?
Lowest qualified bid.
Lowest qualified bid. So we qualify them and then we
Yeah, what
we
we have is a pre-qualification process for this type of contract. So we don't qualify contractors on individual contract. We pre-qualify you for certain types of work and certain magnitude, and then you can bid on any project in Virginia. Versus some other types of contracting, you actually have to pre-qualify for each contract, but typically that's not done by us, except you could say there's a version of that in design build where we shortlist. But again, in general terms, if you're qualified to do this work, you can bid on any project that falls within that bracket.
And you may not know this, but just in this was a point of discussion, how many folks do we have pre-qualified for slurry?
1,100. Oh, for slurry?
Slurry.
4, I'm sorry. 1,100 total, right, sorry.
But to your point, Mr. Siles, there's 4 contractors that have pre-qualified in Virginia to do slurry work.
They're not all in Virginia, but there are 4 firms.
But they're qualified to work in
That's
Virginia.
correct.
Okay. Any other comments or discussions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Next project is I-32. This is for bridge replacement on 340 in the city of Waynesboro. This project actually uses a special type of corrosion-resistant steel, and that was not factored in when the project was originally scoped. That's why that you see a little bit difference here between the planning estimate and what we took bids in on. Again, the evaluative estimate that we did based on this steel, that there was, it did come within the engineer's estimate.
And this is a test site for our research. Our research council's been working on this. This is a test site for, I don't know whether we call it corrosion resistant or non-corrosive in this one.
It's corrosion resistant steel. It's called A1010 steel.
We do this throughout Virginia, and sometimes we'll invest some research dollars for a product that we believe will extend the life of our asset. We're really working towards steel that goes into our bridges that can last in perpetuity.
All right. Is there a motion?
So moved. I'll second that.
Okay. All right. Well, one guy don't sell fuel to.
The only person in the world he doesn't sell fuel to.
Is there any more comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
And the last project is a design-build project. This is to widen from 4 to 6 lanes a segment of I-64. It's a 7-mile-long segment, basically runs from just north of 199 to the Newport News Reservoir. We had, as usual with our design builds, we had 3 competitors that we shortlisted. We think it represents excellent value. we're recommending award.
And if I could, this is 100% funded by HR TAC funds. We have an agreement in place. You'd authorize me to execute agreement. This is called Segment 2 of I-64. Again, it's 100% funded by HR TAC funds, but because I am the contracting entity, it comes to you to approve the contract.
I'll join Mr. Malvin in abstaining on this
I
particular
think
one.
this, well, let's get a, Mr. Malvin, do you have to abstain on this?
Yes,
sir. Okay, so, Mr. Williams,
I have to abstain.
is there a second?
Second. No, I didn't move. I have to abstain.
You have to abstain too. Okay, is there?
I'll move
Ms. Valentine moves, is there a second? Second. Okay. Just a comment here too. So, Mr. Kilpatrick, you mentioned the contract. I think we have a sharing arrangement too, to the extent as we participate and there's overs and unders. And in this particular case, HR TAC gets all this money because they were the funding, so significant savings. So far, the projections, I believe, that we gave them for planning, they have been able, in your competition, to beat those.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I think this is real good value. I'm hoping that the board will, to take this as a sign to keep moving. We'll see what you guys actually do in June when you vote. But with the monies that preliminary allocated, they could go a long ways to getting this project squared away down there.
It's the second phase. The first
It
phase
is.
was $100 million when they were close.
It was right at 100 million,
Right.
just a hair under.
And that was savings.
That was all HR TAC money, wasn't it?
44 million was HR TAC. The first 100 was the Commonwealth Virginia VDOT. The U
Right.
was the first 100, and that project again great value. Segment 3, which would take us, this takes you to basically Busch Gardens, and so the piece from Busch Gardens to Lightfoot, where you get off to go to the Pottery Factory, all that stuff. So that is segment 3, and we expect to follow, assuming that HR TAC agrees continues to agree to fund that project. That'll be, I would expect, either probably next year in 17. I may have that. It may be faster than that, especially depending on how the ultimate award of House Bill 2 funds, or the House Bill 2 process rather. But again, this is great value, and we are actually under construction with segment 1. This will be some months before they actually go to construction, being a design build. But it's pretty exciting to finally get 64 on the peninsula from Lightfoot all the way to the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel essentially improved.
Mr. Casper.
Do we do a construction estimate on this? Does VDOT have a cost of construction estimate?
We do.
Yes.
And how do they compare with?
Excellent value.
Yeah, under our own internal estimate.
Can we present that for future?
The internal estimate?
Cannot.
Oh, we cannot.
The problem with that is that takes away, we'll be happy to share you offline,
Understood.
but making it public, that takes away their competitive bidding edge.
Okay.
In other words, if you post it, so.
Oh, so the other ones are posted in advance?
Yes.
They can look in the 6-year plan and see what the numbers are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so when you go in the 6-year plan, you'll see $206 million in the 6-year plan. But then what happens is construction division staff are doing a kind of a ground truthing estimate to say, okay, what is this really going to cost? And because that's how we look to see if a bid's unbalanced, if we've got discrepancies, if we've got something, an anomaly that comes out of that. Mr. Siles, his folks, the construction division, they're able to use that to ground truth the project.
Mr. Malvin? Because this is a design build, did the contractor introduce any ATCs that supported this price to be?
I don't think this had any alternative bidding items. Today, we do not have alternative technical concepts as a part of the design build process. There is a bill that was, I guess I'll say, sponsored by VTCA, that the engineering and construction industry, that we also believe is a good thing, that will allow us to formally allow alternative technical concepts in the design-build process, because we do see real value. On P3s, it's allowed today, but again, the code language is not clear that we could allow it, so there's code language in place. If the bill passes and is signed, we'll be able to employ that on all design-build projects.
Quite frankly, the answer to your question is no, because he can't do it without being in a P3, except for there's a disagreement what the Attorney General says and others says, and we're going to try to get it codified.
Now what will happen is contract will be awarded, assuming you all vote to award the contract gets awarded. The contract can still submit changes in terms of value engineering, and we would evaluate those and say, yes, that's okay, that's a cost savings, it's a better way of delivering this project. So there are some abilities to do that, but it's somewhat, the incentive is not there post-bid that you have pre-bid. And so that's why we think this legislation is important, and look forward and hopefully it will pass and be signed.
Mr. Chairman, so what portion of our projects are design build versus hard bid?
More and more.
Yeah, I don't have the total value. To give you a sort of a sense, we advertised about I told you that at the December meeting we were approaching $2 billion. At the end of the day for 2015, we advertised approximately $2.2 billion in contract value. I just don't remember what that percent. We can provide that next month. I wanted to say it was somewhere around $500 million.
Are we increasing the amount of projects that we're doing that
in
way?
design build? Yes, we are, and I think we're also, I'll say, getting more mature in how we deliver design builds. In the past, sometimes design builds were delivered for, we used it for obligating federal dollars and things like that, and not necessarily that it was a better contracting method. So I think in Virginia, we are a leader in design builds nationwide, and we're becoming more and more mature about what's the right contracting vehicle. So again, I see that as continuing to be a healthy piece of our business, but traditional design bid build, where 100% plans are developed, we still do that day in and day out.
Any more questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Sykes, thank you very much. Is there any other new business to come before the board?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fraley.
I would like to, as the board knows, I just want to go on the record. My wife had emergency appendix surgery. I think you call that appendectomy.
Yes.
And so I had to leave before our business meeting last time. And I just want the record to reflect that I was not in support of the I-66 inside the Beltway solution. And I just want to state my reasons for that. And, it passed, so.
We will put that in the record.
Well, the reason is, I don't think we ought to be tolling highways where we're not expanding the highway itself. And I'm also concerned about negotiating with localities for what we want to do in terms of statewide deals. And I understand that that's sometimes a political reality. I think we need to be careful about that. I'm also concerned about giving our decision-making power to the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. So those things worried me about it. I don't believe that we can widen 66 or do anything with 66 without obtaining the revenue to do it. And I feel like, the tolling piece is not necessarily something that I would oppose, but the manner in which we're expending the money, I don't like. So I just want to go on the record and say that.
We'll so note that on the record as in that regard.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any other new business come before the board? Next, we meet again here. We are tentatively in February trying to schedule some part or reception or call some get together with the transportation committees in both the Senate and House. I don't know if it's going to work out. By that time, Mr. Dyke, to your point about where some of this legislation is, we may have some specific points to talk with them about.
Well, it's crossover day,
Yeah.
so it's your meeting day is the same day. as
I know,
so
and
it's
in
gonna
fact,
be-
it could be. So it may not work out, that's why, that's exactly right, it may not, but I just throw that out. I do believe, and I wish I had thought about it earlier, while we're here in the assembly, we ought to try to have some correspondence with them. I thought the reception, we're working on that, but maybe not. I've invited them all to come to the meeting. We didn't get any this time.
While you're on the subject, I won't be there because I'm having surgery on that day.
Oh, okay.
I won't be there that day or the next day.
Okay, all right. Well, good luck to you on your surgery.
Oh, it'll be all right.
In that regard, so.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I don't know if it fits with the schedule, but the day after crossover day would be a great day to do it. Because
It's okay with me, but you guys would have to hang around, and I didn't want to.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to cause you to.
Oh, good, thank you.
To do that, because, look, I fully realize you're taking two full days a month out of every month. That is a big commitment. I appreciate your efforts and your work, but I understand that. So
See,
trying
that night of the 16th, every bill has to come out.
I know.
So the chances that they'll be able to come over and do anything are going to be
Slim.
Should we
Mr.
just
Dyke.
move the
Especially
meeting
the crazy
back a
house.
day?
Yeah.
That crazy
I'm sorry, Mr. Dyke.
Should we just consider moving the meeting back a day so we get them the day after?
or ahead of day.
Or ahead
Ahead of day, I don't, y'all, I've gotten significant problems when we have moved meetings from many of you, because of that, so I suspect, Mr. Dyke, that we'll, what I may do is if those, maybe make it, if Wednesday night's better, just so we'll do something, and I'll take a head count of those who could do it, and we'll do something then if it looks like, so why don't we just poll to see if they're on Wednesday night, check if there's anybody, Carol, that would be willing to stay.
You're not talking about changing the
No,
meeting.
not changing the meeting. I'm just saying if those who would like to stay Wednesday night, not changing the meeting, but those who would like to stay Wednesday night, if we are able to work something out, but it's not mandatory. And that's and that. Next year, we'll probably try to plan a little better, but a 60-day session, we wouldn't normally run into crossover. I mean, a 45-day session. It would happen earlier, so anyway. Okay, any other new business? I want to thank everybody. We've got a lot of work ahead. I'm excited. I think the news reports about House Bill 2 were generally positive.
I did too.
Generally, when we started 18 months ago, if you would have woke up and I would have said, we'd have got these headlines, I'd have said, I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think a couple of them, I think the general issue is that the scoring is valid. We still talk about how we want to allocate, but I think that's what my message has been to when I've talked and be in front, that we're comfortable, it's a valid. Don't mean we've got a 100, but it's a valid method. Now the question is, what are the right, what do we call them, rules, or how we choose to allocate. We've offered you a recommended way, and I'm sure we'll have lots of discussion around that. But it's been a long 18 months, and these 6-year plan hearings, I would encourage you all to attend, because I think we'll really get a feedback now. We actually see scores, and we'll have some real things to judge it against. So very, very looking forward to these public hearings.
Charlie, have you had any feedback from the districts, how they're feeling about any of these scoring yet, or they're?
We're actually, I've got a conference call at 1 o'clock today. We did not provide them the scoring until we provided it to you, so I think they're still working through, looking at it. So I'll get some feedback today.
It'd be interesting to hear what they.
May I comment? We are clarifying today, Mr. Chairman, some of the confusion in the Fredericksburg area that occurred yesterday as a result of someone who was not knowledgeable about the process and the scoring, who I think prematurely put out information to about 70 people, and that caused a lot of confusion. I would urge you to really talk to the district administrators so that they drive the conversation at the regional level, and they're fully informed so that they can put out the right information so that that doesn't happen again. So, kudos to you talking to them, but I'm asking my district people to really get to the bottom of this, really get fully engaged, fully informed, so that we drive the conversation, not somebody else.
Okay.
Just like anybody else, right?
All right, well, thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned, and hope you all have safe travels as we head back to where you're headed to.
Yeah.
Huh?